Historically, some of Empire's toughest matchups have been in games where they get outshot, more or less. Certainly, Dwarfs was pretty much always the case, where their shooting was just slightly better than yours and could outcompete for the most part. There were maybe some patches where, like Demogryph Knights, very early on, and Great Swords were actually good enough to compete, but for the most part, it's been pretty tough sledding for the Empire in this matchup. Auckland long rifles do present another long-range option to help skew things in your favor, and while my opponent here, Tactical Lich, didn't take any actual long-range options, let's see, he did take a lot of mid-range, and by a lot, I mean a lot. He's got a full 20 stack of Dwarfs here, including several Thunderers, 4 Thunderers, we've got 4 Quarrelers as well, Slayers in the back, Miners with Blasting Charges, Dwarf Warriors, and Maokai Maxson to lead things. I've got some Pistoliers over on the side here, just kind of probing, looking for weaknesses, trying to get at those Slayers potentially. 3 Great Swords of my own, and some Swordsmen, 5 of them to form a line here. Got 2 big centerpieces to try and provide some cover. Got a land ship, and the Master Engineer Lord in the Steam Tank, which is one of the best generic lords, I think, in the game, probably. To be honest, yeah, just generally Steam Tanks are quite good right now, and it has the added benefit of his grenade launcher attack, which is quite good, actually. Probably a little bit too good. I do expect that to probably be nerfed slightly in the future, but nonetheless, let's get things rolling. The 3 long rifles, which you'll have to ignore them aiming through their own eye patches here. But yes, they're going to scopes out, start popping shots, just kind of generally on fire at will at this front line of Dwarf Warriors as they come into range. But as I pop up the range indicators, a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to start focus firing on the Thunderers, just because I see them as the biggest threat to my big centerpieces here, obviously the Steam Tank and the land ship. Now, obviously, with the Dwarfs go very heavily into, like, cannons, right? That could give me some problems, but the Empire also, I mean, it just kind of depends. It's a little like a game of chicken, right? Which player is going to skew so heavily into missiles that they just win on volume of fire, or get rushed down and killed in melee? It's an interesting kind of trade-off, certainly, and I think this matchup does help. We're going to throw a little flesh to stone here on the Master Engineer and the Steam Tank as he comes forward. The idea here with these two charging through is just to do as much disruption as possible, and you saw already just a handful of volleys from the long rifles. 3 of them were able to rout a Thunderer. He almost might have missed it, but yeah, a little extra fast forward there as the land ship and the Steam Tank charge on through, trying to just stop up and disrupt and absorb some of the damage here. And certainly we are absorbing damage. That land ship getting absolutely lit up. But likewise, the Thunderers, man, from the long rifles, just getting absolutely shredded. Keep in mind, this is without Shield Breaker, technically, because I didn't take the Regiment Renown. Although I don't think the long rifles themselves are subjected to a missile block chance, based on what we're seeing here. It's hard to say. But the Thunderers also, you can see the new missile block chance of the Steam Tank coming into play there as they kind of shoot from the various angles. Be sure to pay attention to that. Pistoliers here come up to support the land ship here. They're going to accidentally get charged by Slayers, then start to skirmish away, use their pistols to good effect. Meanwhile, on the front line, we've got blasting charges going off. Great swords, swordsmen moving in as Tactical Lich's Dwarfs come forward. He does manage to land a couple of volleys of charges on the long rifles, but they're kind of loose, irregular formation. Means they don't actually take a whole lot of damage from it, which is awesome. I was very worried that they were just going to get nuked on that, but no, in fact, pleasingly for me, they did not. And we're able to successfully disrupt kind of the superior mid-range volume from the Dwarfs to such a degree that the long rifles are able to continuously keep focusing targets without getting counter-skirmished themselves. Of course, they don't have shields like Gisele's or crane guns, so they are extremely vulnerable to enemy mid-range counterfire. That's probably one of their biggest weaknesses. They're also just quite vulnerable in melee. Generally don't want them getting hit by a lot of things, but you can see the power here. If they're able to stay protected, and with good lines of sight, they can absolutely punish infantry units. Obviously large units as well would probably suffer quite badly to this, but they have some degree of penetration, it would seem, like crane guns and Gisele's do. So yeah, the new VFX for Thunderers looking very cool, no doubt. But they are getting popped as well. They get their shields redesigned. Looks like they got their shields redesigned. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Love the smell of gunpowder in the morning. Certainly is a way in this matchup. But Landship continuing to charge and disrupt. Probably hasn't done all that much damage, to be honest. But that's just fine. This dwarf front line, though, is still fighting through. The greatswords are trading okay in certain instances, but Tactical Lich is able to get some Slayers through, actually, to get on my long rifles, which is potentially a little bit menacing. We've got some more Slayers here, relatively healthy, and Thunder is also coming back from route. You can see the Landship, as it's charging through, is, yeah, it's getting very, very low. I'm going to try and throw a regrowth on it. I think I had maybe already regrowth once already, but it actually just dies. Yeah, unfortunately hidden very anticlimactically behind that banner. And I had issued an order for it to regrowth, which the Jade Wizard still fulfilled, even though it died. I kind of didn't notice he was running over to do it, so that feels bad. To lose that Winds of Magic just regrowthing. You know, hopefully, let's say there's some crew inside there somewhere just hiding to at least get healed. But anyway, yeah, blasting charges continuing to go off here as well. The front line and Hawkman long rifle starting to get compromised and killed and routed off, as I'm not able to sufficiently protect them anymore. But yeah, infantry still fighting to a degree. We've got all the great swords doing all right, and Slayers are definitely threatening, but the great swords should be able to deal with them. Likewise, the Master Engineer is still fairly healthy on the steam tank, so though the loss of the Landship definitely hurts. Let's see what I can accomplish. We've got little pocket engagements all over the field here. Corlers peppering those swordsmen in the back. Yeah, some Corlers coming back over here, potentially threatening the Pistoliers, who I'm going to set in motion to try and rout some of these units, like charge in sideways on those Thunderers. Trying to rally some of these great swords here as well, or swordsmen rather. I push through the infantry to finally finish off the last of these Thunderers and whatnot. Tank coming around for a charge down the side. Try and impact as many of these unit models as possible. Yeah, it did okay. Wasn't a perfect side charge there, but certainly leadership damage is enough to terrify away all these units. And with swordsmen and great swords in a free follow-up, then they can just get hits continuously. You can see the great swords chasing the Slayers, who are chasing the swordsmen. These long rifles also come back from route very critically. They're going to help to see off a few more of these units on the far side. Swordsmen move through to kind of sandwich the Slayers here, make sure the great swords can actually catch them. As these other swordsmen charge on. Ooh, Malachi's little explosion there. Nice. Does some really good damage to those bunched up great swords. That's his Cinder Blast Cluster Bomb. Quite effective little grenade blast there. Those sort of heroic magic missiles historically haven't always been great. That explosive damage is actually quite good. Malachi's shotgun is also threatening enough that the Master Engineer, you know, he's going to declare the superiority of Imperial machinery and just charge Malachi. Tactical Lich, of course, being gent that he is, did not take the Landship here. Although we can all agree Malachi's Landship is certainly, or airship rather, the airship, the Thunder Barge, is superior to the Landship, yes, and the steam tank, sure, but yeah, it's on the Dwarfs, so therefore it's not as cool automatically, at least for me. Although what is not cool, I will say, is all these Thunderers coming back from route. I'm going to get a nice concave on my great swords as they charge down the hill. So we'll give them a nice flesh to stone so they can eat some of those shots and not just completely die. Interesting VFX on flesh to stone there. You can definitely see kind of the shield. Great swords, of course, decently cost-effective these days at their intended role. But, oh, actually they have little, like, bits of stone flying around them in the shield. That's very cool, I have to say. Jade Wizard himself also mixing it up, trying to get some damage in on those Corlers. It's a pretty desperate fight at this point for me to just try and finish everything off. But I'm very confident that the steam tank's still so healthy. And, yeah, these long rifles also had come back some time ago. I actually didn't notice until I think just now, but they're now going to start firing in, I believe, on this little Slayer and Minor Pocket, or at least momentarily. Flesh of Stone was sufficient to protect those great swords, at least to finish off the Thunderers. Now can finish off the Miners. I do have some of my own swordsmen being chased off, and some ranged units kind of rallying for the Dwarfs over here on the far side. But, terror of the steam tank is such that it will be such a pain. We'll fast forward now through the tank's last stand. See the Slayers get killed to a man there by the long rifles, and then the blasting charges have to go back, and they get routed off, and then the next one tries their luck, and they also get routed off. So nice kind of last stand by that one remaining long rifle. And then, of course, another regrowth on the Master Engineer. Heals him back up. He's able to rout, terrify away the Quarrelers. Jade Wizard finishing off the the Slayers there. Also Flesh to Stones himself, just so that he can run in on Malachi without taking so much damage, even though he's completely hopeless in this engagement. Yeah, Malachi's a much better combatant, it must be said. Although 0 armor, so at least the Jade Wizard maybe did like one good swing on him. But Jade Wizard just gets straight clubbed. Pays the price for his loyalty. The Steam Tank Engineer, not happy about this turn of events. Close the distance. It's just Malachi that's left. Hawkland Long Rifles moving in as everything else gets routed off. But yeah, despite Malachi's shotgun blasts, gonna do some to the Steam Tank, but not enough. The Steam Tank moves into combat here. Little Steam Blast or two right in the face, and that's gonna be that. So a fun one for sure. Quite the game with Tactical Lich, I have to say. Very impressive stuff on a number of levels from the Master Engineers and to a lesser extent the Landship, even though I was using it very aggressively, not necessarily you know, as a missile platform, but more as a disruption chariot. Did very well in that role. Allowed the long rifles to all feast on value, over 1,000 damage value each on them, and helping to very much limit the effectiveness of those Thunderers. I had a couple of very good targets for them to shoot at, so I feel like that worked out decently well. Again, you could optimize the Dwarf build, of course, to take out this Empire build, but I think the takeaway for me from this game is just that the long rifles are a good tool in the arsenal, as is the Landship, surprisingly. Can kind of be a little bit of a missile sponge. The Master Engineer also helps in this matchup, and just generally the Steam Tank rework, but especially the Master Engineer, being able to take it in your Lord slot with that extra explosive grenade launcher attack. Malachi also, surprisingly, I didn't realize until after the battle. I mean, granted, a little bit of healing on some expensive single entities, so maybe there's some inflation there, but his shotgun attack was able to dish out a lot of damage over time to the Landship and to the Steam Tank, so although I had kind of been sleeping on Malachi as a damaged healer, I might have to revisit him for certain matchups where you need to potentially continue shooting and just have an extra pretty strong shooting single entity. The Slayers also did a decent job trying to get in my backline and chase missile units around. But for the rest of the build, I mean, some Dwarf Warriors do well. I'm sure some of the miners were cost effective as well, but yeah, again, I feel like the tools help. I still don't know. I think probably this is going to be slightly Dwarf favored still, just based on, we had one other test game as well before this where I took a different build and it just did not work at all, which I actually don't remember what I took. I also included some long rifles, though, because that was kind of the main thing we were testing. I was trying to see like where they would fit in different build structures, and this is one that seemed effective. Again, it depends on what the Dwarfs bring, certainly, but that's part of the fun of this game, is the macro of army builds and kind of deciding what's going to be effective, but definitely seems promising. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.